No, because the linesman is part of it, Jack. You can't just assume he can't make a decision from where he is because he's on the officiating team.
But the thing is, the referee from where he is, he has the best view in the house. The linesman can't call it definitively one way or another.
Yeah, but it doesn't matter.
Looking over, hoping
Jack,
for
Jack. With this the next show. It's time for the next show.
Oh, how long? I've not slept in 4 days.
It's been a while. Listeners, welcome back. It's For The Fans show. Me and Jack still haven't really decided who was right and who was wrong over David Luiz and Sergio Aguero's tussle. But we are back, and not only that, Jack, we're alone.
Yeah, we kind of bored away Keno. He walked off about 2 days ago. We've not seen him since.
Yeah, so, I mean, if anyone hears from Keno, do let us know. But apparently we're not mature enough for him anymore because we won't stop talking about the same thing over and over again. But what we will do is talk about the Premier League action that's happened over the weekend. Luckily, we stopped our arguments to watch some football. And it was quite an interesting weekend, Jack. Lots of goals this weekend.
Well, I loved it because on the Saturday, just goals everywhere. It was like all the teams you don't really care about defending kind of all met up for a big party. The issue is today, as we record on the Sunday, which is a rarity for us, just 3-1-0s. It's like, some boring teams basically play on the Sunday.
Well, yeah, they're arguably the bigger games, but not as many goals. Every home team on the Saturday scored 3 or more, which I quite like. As a record, I quite like. I don't know if that's happened before. I can't remember.
I mean, I think we should give bonus points for scoring 3 or more goals in a game.
It would certainly make games more interesting.
I
but
mean,
with
the Checker Aid trophy, we all know like that's got the whole penalty shootout for a bonus point. We're not that far off, I don't think, in English football.
Well, we could just adopt MLS rules and not have rules anymore. Just mess everything up. So I've
a playoff, top 8 teams.
I've got a thing about MLS.
West Ham win the Premier League.
They would. Last year they would have been contenders. So yeah, it's a bit like me and you recording again. A bit old times, isn't it?
It's a bit of a throwback. People don't know, like, when For The Fans started, it was like a Football Manager podcast.
Yeah.
We kind of dropped that quite abruptly, I feel. But for those like hardcore listeners who have been here since the beginning, they know. They know
the dark truths. So yeah, we'll chat about some football. Well, I think what we'll do is we'll start off with probably the biggest game of yesterday, I dare say. Not in chronological order today, Jack, but because you've done the running order and not Keno.
I've just broken all the rules, I'm afraid.
Yeah, so Leicester City won a Premier League football match.
It's a miracle, isn't it? It's been like waiting for it to happen for a while now, and even more so, it's come against City at home. I did love, actually, I was watching the game and there was a bit where it's like, I can't believe City are losing 4-0, and kind of the co-commentator turns around and goes, it's the champions though. I'm sat thinking, under any other circumstances, I'd probably agree with that. Yeah. But given how this season's like gone out, you can't really go, kind of expected City to lose and be 4 goals down against Leicester. It doesn't really work like that after this season. But yeah, as you said, like I think this was probably the biggest game just because it was quite an interesting scenario for all the teams, really. Obviously, City coming back off that defeat last time out at the weekend previously, obviously without Aguero. And then, well, Leicester desperately looking just to claw themselves out of kind of the mist of a relegation dogfight, which at the halfway stage, they're all thereabouts. They're almost kind of in.
Well, yeah, it was curious because it was the first time I feel like, especially in the league this year, that we'd seen the Leicester we kind of all expected at the start of the season. We never really got, but they were literally 2-0 up after 6 minutes, which for any team's pretty good.
I missed the first goal. I thought I'll just to the toilet, get some nachos in the microwave with some cheese on. Came back, been a goal.
Were they nice nachos? Or?
I mean, they probably weren't worth the goal.
Had you finished them by goal 2? Or...
I hadn't. I mean, I hadn't actually sat down by goal 2. I just was like, getting back in my seat, and I just see. Was it Danny? No, it was Andy King, wasn't it, who scored the second?
Andy King got the second, yeah. Nice.
That caught me off guard.
Well, yeah, because it's so. Well, yeah, you're still trying to get over why he wasn't called up to the England squad. But it's the kind of situation for City where you're sort of 5-0 down, 5 minutes gone, 2-0 down. Where did you go from there? They didn't have their full strength lineup either. They missed some sort of notable names this game. Where do Leicester kind of go from now then? Because this is the kind of win that could catapult their season, Jack. Jamie Vardy's got a bloody hat-trick.
I know, and he's been overdue one, hasn't he? He's been overdue a goal, in truth. He looked very relieved and very happy as he came off the pitch. I feel like for Leicester, this season's kind of interesting because they've had this distraction of obviously the Champions League, and that's definitely played kind of a role in terms of their team selections. A few questions asked about the fact they dropped so many first-team players to play Porto in their last game, albeit with nothing on the line.
Yeah.
And now that decision looks absolutely fantastic. And I guess the question now really is for Leicester, with I guess the Champions League midweek games kind of out of the fray now. And with the kind of Christmas running, which still is fairly hectic, but it is perhaps a little bit more spaced out, can they kind of focus? Can they find kind of a consistent 11 and kind of rekindle that form? And, just kind of get a bit of momentum going, because obviously it definitely feels like with the Champions League, it has been a distraction for them.
Yeah.
And, now it's kind of a chance for them really to kick on with their season. They're through to the knockout stages, which I think, as far as Leicester are concerned, is probably what their maximum expectation was for this season in the Champions League, was just to try and get out the group. That would have been the aim.
Of course.
Really now,
go on.
I feel like the league form's got to kind of be examined, because they've got 2 wins in their last 10, including this one. And, well, with the stint of games they've got coming up, they're going to be desperately looking, I guess, to really get their season back on track.
Yeah, this was a point last year, Jack, where Leicester were pretty strong. This is where the idea that Leicester would fall off. Everyone expected over the Christmas period Leicester to just buckle. And that's not what happened. They just carried on, ploughing through, staying top of the league. I think Arsenal and them sort of shared it around this period, did they not? I'm pretty sure Arsenal sort of came back on top. But the point I was going to make is that apart from Schmeichel, who's obviously out injured, this Leicester side is very similar to the side that won the league last year. Simpson, Morgan, Huth and Fuchs started at the back. You've got Mahrez, King, Albrighton and Vardy. The only differences are that Daniel Amati plays now in the centre instead of Kante, and you've got Slimani starting over Okazaki. Now, and interestingly, I'm not 100% sure if that's the sort of the same thing they've been playing every single week, but as I said at the start, it felt like the Leicester of last season. It felt like you were watching a side that had kind of nothing to lose and were just going for it. And I dare say this was the sort of game where they did probably feel a bit like that. They've seen City this season, City have been good, and they had this what have you got to lose attitude, and look how much it paid off for them. A little bit of confidence, and look what happened.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I feel like City did play into Leicester's hands as the game went on, of course.
Well, City were terrible. City were
really poor. But even, obviously, it's easy to say, they played it into their hands after the first 5 minutes. But the City side, the team that it is, how they've been playing, even when they go 2 goals down early on, you expect to see a response from them, within that kind of 10-minute period, I guess, following the first 2 goals. And they showed a little bit of that, but to concede a third, within the kind of 20th minute or so, it's just a little bit concerning. And obviously there's been questions asked of this City defence, kind of not just this season. It's not really an exclusive problem, particularly with Kompany out, and you kind of look across that kind of City defence and it just looked like a defence in disarray in a lot of ways. It just looked like it had such a lack of cohesion. They were trying to play free at the back, but Kolarov was just bombing up down the left hand side thinking he was a full back still. John Stones was just left horrifically exposed. Yeah. And it just felt like a City team with a game plan that was kind of torn up kind of within the first few minutes, and then they never really got a grip on the game until they were already 4 goals down.
Yeah, it's interesting when you see big sides go behind, because by the very nature of being a better side with better players, the idea that you're 3-0 down at any point is a bit foreign. So to come back from that, it really shows is a team able to do it. There aren't many teams, good teams, that like you see, sometimes in the Champions League, we've seen big sort of demolition jobs happen. When a team are sort of 3 or 4-0 up, sometimes that extends to 5 and 6, because these teams that are in this position don't really know what to do. By their very nature, they expect to control the game and win the game. And when that doesn't happen, there's little reaction from these bigger sides, and that was essentially what we saw with City against Leicester. There was, to me at least, there was little to no reaction. They had a lot of the ball, which is great, but when you're 3-0 down, I mean, have the ball. It's my sort of attitude.
There was no urgency, was there? They had 78% of possession, I think it was,
which is
at the end of the game, which is ludicrously
massive.
high.
It's massive, yeah.
And I feel like it's one of those things where what's the point in having that much of the ball if you're 3 goals down and you're not going to create anything with it?
Yeah,
I could understand if it's 0-0 away from home against Leicester, first half, I feel like it's perfectly acceptable to try and boss the possession and try and craft out a few opportunities if, and it's a big if, you think you're confident enough that when you do lose the ball, you're going to be capable of defending.
Yeah.
And I feel like City's issue is they've overplayed a little bit, and then when they did go the goals down, there was still a weird lack of attacking intent, whether or not that was kind of encapsulated, I guess, by the absence of Aguero.
Well, me and Keane talked about this. You may well have been involved in the discussion, Jack, but the idea that Pep Guardiola won't change his philosophy. I mean, he said this week that he doesn't train tackles, which I can't imagine he does. But Guardiola was like a deep-lying sort of defensive playmaker. You'd think he'd be like quite good at tackles, really. Well, he wasted in his own ability.
More of a regista than deep-lying playmaker, I guess.
would give you that. Yeah, fair enough. But and then you bring up Aguero. So not only is he not willing to change the idea of how he plays, he brings Iheanacho in, who admittedly has done very well sort of at the start of his City career. Has scored goals. Sort of every time he's come on, he tends to do something, doesn't he? Looked out of his depth, I must say, this weekend for the first time.
I think he was very frustrated,
isolated as well, yeah, for sure. But
there was so much play going on behind him, and he was dropping deep to get it, and there was just no one willing really to push on ahead of him and kind of add an additional spearhead to the attack. And it became very predictable. There were times where City would have the ball for a long period of time, but as soon as they tried to play that last ball, which, to be honest, they very infrequently tried, it was quickly scoffed up by the Leicester defence. And I think for him, it was a very tough game to play, and I feel like he showed perhaps a little bit of a lack of experience in the way he didn't really adapt his game so much, and I guess that was it frustrated me in some ways to watch him play, but then it almost frustrated me more to see the roll of the dice that was Yaya Toure play as a false nine. Well, I said on Twitter, it kind of made me irrationally giddy watching Yaya Toure, because Yaya Toure was played at centre-back by Guardiola back when he was in Spain, and now it's kind of like, stick him up top. He's the big man up top for us now, and it's just a bit questionable.
The thing with City in general, I made this point at the very start of the season, end of the transfer window, and I made this point on Twitter, and people got on my back and said, "Oh no, Nolito can play up front, and Iheanacho can play there, and Sterling can adapt." Well, we didn't see that, did we? At the weekend, we didn't see Nolito or Sterling really play as the full attacking striker. As you say, Toure filled in like it's a false nine. Manchester City are one of, I mean, it's fair to say, right, one of the biggest clubs right now in world football, and have two recognised strikers. Two. One of which shouldn't be even put in this position. Iheanacho, if things were proper, like going on properly at City, Iheanacho shouldn't really be starting this game. It should be someone of the mould of Boney or Dzeko that had been brought in to kind of play second fiddle to Aguero, but still be quite a good option if relied upon. And frankly, City don't have that, and I'll be amazed if Guardiola doesn't look at this squad and think, do you know what, we are missing a forward man. I don't know who they'd go for. I don't know who he thinks would fit in. But the idea that they're going to continue like this all season, they're not going to win the league unless they buy one. And that was my concern, is that if you miss Aguero, he's already been banned for 3 games. He's currently serving another 4. 7 games of the season without Sergio Aguero. It's very difficult to win the league with that sort of on your case, essentially. And City don't have enough. A lot of people talking about City's defensive problems, and yes, they've got them, and some of them are self-inflicted, and some of them are problematic. Like Company getting injured every time he plays is a problem. But to me, City's attacking line is just like I'm not going to say it's bare bones, but as I say, you need more. Like, you're going to need more throughout the season. Look at every other team in the league that are fighting for this title. They've all got another option. Like, at the moment, Wenger has put. He's put Sanchez up top. If that doesn't start to work out, then he's got Giroud to bring. He's got Perez to bring. At least he gave himself the options. Whereas Guardiola, what happens now if Iheanacho gets injured? Say he pulls up next game and you've still got Aguero suspended, Iheanacho's out. Then what's the plan? You play a false 9? Well, that clearly isn't how you wanted to set up at the start of the season. So to me, he's getting that wrong. And some of his buys are questionable.
Another problem for City, I think, is as much as you look at their kind of attacker problem, the centre-back issue is huge. This game, Stones is the only recognised...
Fullback as well, though, really. Their fullbacks aren't that good.
Well, no, the thing is, at least they've got fullbacks. This game, they started with... They have John Stones as the sole centre-back in their team. They've got Sangha playing one side, Kolarov the other. I wouldn't classify either of those as natural centre-backs. On the bench, they had Adara Bayo, I can't say his name, Adara Bayo, who is a young... centre-back, who I'm only familiar with because I did a New York City FC save on Football Manager last year where I got him in on loan. He was on the bench as their backup centre-back option. And I think a big problem here is, if we're going to draw the natural comparisons between City and Chelsea, I think you've got to look at the centre-back position and go, what is the difference there? And the difference is, City have got players like Stones. He's been very liable this year. He's made 5 mistakes leading to goals, which is the most in the Premier League.
I will say on that with John Stones, one, he's learning to play a new way under Guardiola. Claudio Bravo is a liability waiting to happen. But equally, Claudio Bravo can't really trust what's in front of him. It's a bit of a catch-22 for City at the moment. Their goalkeeper's worried about what happens in front of him. The people in front of him worried about what's going to happen behind them. There's not a great deal of confidence. I dare say, Jack, in this entire team, there is a distinct lack of leadership. Like, you think about the players that aren't featuring this season for Manchester City. Joe Hart, Vincent Kompany, 2 of the biggest talkers, biggest names. Zabaleta's not first name on the team sheet this season either. 3 of their leaders. I mean, I know he played against Leicester.
He started this game from midfield, didn't he?
Well, but you know what I mean, though? There's such a lack of leadership. And when things are going wrong, you need voices. And I wonder who in the City team are the voices. Because, like, you think about Yaya Toure, he's been at City a long time, but he's been cast aside by Guardiola, who's only recently come back into the fold. There are no players in this side, to me, that look like they will step up and lead. Like, I mean, can you see one? Can you see someone that will do that? I mean, if you're asking Stones to do it, then I think that's a bit unfair on John Stones.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, he's a youngster. I feel like he's been thrown to the wolves here. I'm pretty sure at the start of the year, Guardiola does not expect a situation where John Stones is starting with Sanya and Kolarov either side of him in a back three. I feel like there's a degree of, I guess, bad fortune about the fact that Kompany and Otamendi are out. But then you kind of look across City.
He loaned Mangala out as well.
Well, that's what I was about to say. You look at the players that they've let go in recent years. City players who, perhaps in hindsight, would have been useful in this situation. I'm talking about players like
Michaelis.
He was going to be the first name I said. Mangala, Di Michaelis. Players who, yes, they're old. Yes, they've had their problems at City. But I feel like they're a lesser evil than trying to slot in someone like Sanya or Kolarov, who just seem a little bit...
Like, Mangala's not old, not particularly old, but there's no one convincing me that Mangala wouldn't be a better option in the game against Leicester than what they actually played.
I mean, it's an ongoing problem for City as well, this kind of whole sense about thing. There's been a conveyor belt of players over the years, really. You look at players like Boateng, Savic, two players who now are playing for top European sides, and yet City are in this weird situation where they've got this roundabout going on of kind of players and not really sure who's going to settle where. I feel like there's still a long way to go before this City side is a balanced side. I feel like on their day, if the entire team is fit, it's a team that can very much win the league quite comfortably, actually. But the issue they've got is that you look at players like Kompany, he's not been fit in the last 2 or 3 seasons.
I was going to say, when was the last time we saw a full-strength City side play 5 games continuously? I don't think...
it's a long time away. I feel like we've talked so much about City here and their problems, and it's kind of... maybe a bit harsh on City that after just 2 defeats in a row we're getting on their back, but in reality these are 2 massive games that we're going to look back in hindsight at the end of the season, and it's going to be a case of, was this a turning point? Did they get back on the straight and narrow after these 2 defeats, or did they really lose that kind of grip on the title, Chase, which in retrospect they kind of have, like 7 points off Chelsea now. But for Leicester, I mean, what an important win this is for their season. As you said, it's the first time really this year that I think you could look at them and go, that is the Leicester side that played last year.
Yeah.
There was some stat about the fact it was the first time Mahrez and Vardy had linked up for a goal since February.
Yeah, when I heard that stat, I thought, well, hang on, they did play another 3 months of that Premier League season they won, so it clearly isn't that big of an issue. Like, I don't know, maybe people are looking into that too much because they were the stars of last year and they weren't combining. But if it was February, that means from February to May, when they actually won the league, they also weren't linking up.
When Spurs bottled it.
Look at it both ways. I want to talk about Guardiola, but we'll save that for the midweek fixtures, and we'll talk about it after that.
Yeah, I mean, 2 big games coming up for both of these sides, really. I believe Leicester played Bournemouth, and it's Watford City. So
Watford.
For both those teams, they're going to be looking to, with City bounce back and with Leicester really kind of kick on now and pull away from this kind of odd predicament they are currently in 14th in the Premier League.
Yes, let's talk about that. I say we're not working in chronological order today, folks. But let's talk about Watford Everton, which I thought was I dare say, it was a bit of an average game for a long time, despite the goals, which were actually quite nice. Like Aka's goal was lovely. His little flick. I love a flick.
Oh, it was good. He scored a very similar one for Roma a few years ago to win them a game.
Oh, I love that.
There was a bit where they were interviewing me. He's like, yeah, I've done 3 or 4 of these in my career. I'd like to believe he keeps count of them.
Yeah, I always like when commentators act as if like it's the first time something's ever happened, and the player's like, "No, I do it all the time in training." It's like, oh, so it's not as impressive as we think it is. No, it's not really.
He looks very agile though, doesn't he, Kaka? He doesn't look agile, sorry, but he was quite agile. I've not seen that much of him in truth.
No, has he played a lot this year, Akaka?
No, it's his first start. He came in for I think £7 million, 10 million euros, like at the start of the year. So he wasn't a small transfer really. Obviously, they've got players like Isaac Success, they've got players like Igalo and Dini, and they've not really been scoring that many. Watford, I think they've got 15 goals this season with 11 different goal scorers, and I think Capue's got like 6 of them.
So that is quite literally Akaka's second game.
Well, it's one of his very first appearances for the club, and he's got 2 goals on it. And there's going to be a question asked now of why didn't we try this sooner, I imagine. I know Dini's desperately looking for his 100th career goal for Watford. I feel like I get reminded of it every week I'm watching Match of the Day. It's like their go-to fact at the moment is
Well,
I don't know what they better have a montage ready. They better have a montage ready of like all 100 goals for him, or it's a bit of a waste, really.
Each broadcaster have like their little quirks at the moment. The BBC have got the Troy Deeney thing. They also like to talk about world class players. That's the thing that they've got at the moment. Who's world class? Who isn't world class? With Sky, every time I've seen Sky do a West Ham game recently, or I think BT are victims of it as well. Maybe it's just an Andy Carroll thing, Jack, because Andy Carroll is the fiercest player on the planet according to the pundits of Sky Sports and BT.
I mean, I was completely legitimately watching NBC's coverage of the Liverpool-West Ham game today. And there was a bit at half-time where the kind of panellists just like, just throw on Andy Carroll now. He's going to scare Karius away. Stick the big man on, pump the ball into the box. It's just like, that's not how football works, though, is it?
It's quite funny how he's considered like this secret weapon, although everyone knows who he is and what happens. But like I've said before, when you throw Andy Carroll on, it's a bit like added time multi-ball. You throw him on, everything just goes a little bit mental. That's what Liverpool used to do when they had him as well. But on this game then, quite a disappointing result for Everton, who their slide continues, Jack.
It does. So what is this now, like 1 win in 10?
It's whatever it is, it's not good. I'll say that much. A team that started so brightly this season, that's what's confusing, isn't it? When a team does that and then falls off, there's always a team that tends to do it. It's always a bit strange. Their only win comes against West Ham. I think it was a home win, against West Ham. And as you say, that's the only win they've had in 10 league games. They are the most average team in the Premier League right now. 5 wins, 5 draws, 5 losses, 19 scored, 19 against, so a goal difference of 0, and 20 points. They're sadly not in 10th, they're in 9th, but you get the drift. They've got the same points as someone in 10th. They're the most average team in the Premier League that actually look like they could do something. What do we put their sort of slide down to then? Because Coleman doesn't seem to know, really.
Well, this is the weird thing, isn't it? When Coleman came in, you expected a defensive masterclass. You're expecting this Everton side that were conceding a lot of goals in the second half last season, were really struggling to kind of, basically sort themselves out and, get better drilled, which is something they've had this ongoing issue with. But this year, defensively, they've been surprisingly poor, particularly recently. I know they conceded 5 against Chelsea. Let's ignore that one as an outlier. But you kind of look at their stats as a whole, they're struggling. They've conceded 11 goals in their past 4 away games and lost every single one. They spent big money on Balassi as an option out wide, and he was kind of linking up quite nicely with Lukaku. Obviously, kind of ousted Deulofeu from the first team and was looking like a good fit for them. He's now injured for the rest of the season.
Yeah.
For Everton, I think the issue comes down to the fact that they just need to get a win or two and just get a little bit of momentum. But the longer that they kind of failed to be able to kind of tighten up defensively, the longer this problem's going to go. They've had 1 clean sheet in their last 10, which came in their 1 win against West Ham. Simply put, there's just a lack of discipline. And I don't want to say a lack of quality in a way, but I feel like Everton, they have their 1-star player really in Lukaku. And with the exception of him, you kind of look around their team and it's just all a little bit disjointed and there isn't really a focal point to the team as such.
Yeah, it's interesting at Everton as well, because Everton made, when you look at the transfers, Everton didn't spend any money, really. I mean, they might have spent a little bit considering the amount of players they bought in on fees and things. But they bought in Gueye, Williams, Balassi, and a couple of sort of less than 2 mil or whatever. And that doesn't quite add up to what City paid for John Stones. And I wonder, and you look at some of the players that left Everton in the window. Tim Howard went, Pienaar went, Osman went, Tony Hibbert went. Think about the wages some of those guys will be on. You would probably expect that Everton would be doing far better with the resources they had at their disposal. And you mentioned Balassi, now Balassi's out and they have to rely on Deulofeu, who clearly wasn't the first choice. It puts Everton in an increasingly more difficult position. And if Lukaku's not, I know he got a couple of goals, but if he's not, Lukaku's funny, Jack, because he doesn't look like he's trying that hard at the moment. But he's still scoring, and that gives him sort of the cop-out of, I've scored, but I don't know how difficult he's actually making it for defenders.
Yeah,
it's curious.
No, that's fair. I mean, Watford, for them, this game's a pretty big one, I think, up to 7th now. They look like a bit of a surprise package, actually, for me, Watford. They're kind of grinding out results. They had 2 defeats in a row coming up to this against Stoke and West Brom, which actually, when you consider where West Brom are, that's not actually such a terrible result. And of course, they did have that kind of quite humbling defeat against Liverpool, but they're kind of grinding out results silently. A few 1-0 wins against the likes of Hull and Middlesbrough, and then getting important draws against teams like Bournemouth. They're kind of just up there by virtue of the fact that they seem to be able to get, kind of be fairly consistent. There's a lot of teams in the Premier League this year that seem to be getting these shock results or, really pushing teams to the wire. And then in the games that they perhaps should be doing a little bit better in, they just kind of struggle.
Yeah.
And particularly when you look at kind of teams like Everton, perhaps, who, as we've talked about in this game, you probably expect them to do a little bit better. Watford have kind of just grinded their way up the league. They're not scoring a load. They're not conceding a load. They're kind of, in some ways, it's a little bit harsh, actually, to be so kind of praising of Watford and negative of Everton because of the fact the two teams are separated by 1 point. But I feel like Everton, their aspirations are a lot higher this year.
Yeah. It's when you look at sort of the last 10 games as well. Like
oh, of course,
the slide Everton to add, and sort of the up. I wouldn't say Watford are on upward turn, but they suddenly find themselves in 7th place.
They've been consistent over the first 15 games of the season, and I think that's it.
It's interesting you use the word consistent, because I don't actually think Watford fans are probably going to hate this. I don't necessarily think Watford are actually that good, but I think the way in which they manage football matches is very good. And the Everton game for me was a perfect example of it. I don't think they were like 10 times better than Everton. I don't think they were much between the two sides, frankly. They scored 2 set pieces. Everton defensively were pretty much asleep, and I'm not sure. Like, I think 7th place at the moment flatters Watford a little bit, and not many Watford fans would have seen this coming if you just said at the start of the season.
Well, I think we backed them fairly early on in that one of the preview episodes we did for this season, and a lot of Watford fans were just like, be happy if we avoid relegation.
Well, I thought they'd finish sort of, if I had to put a number on it, I'd probably say like 13th. I thought that would be kind of the basis they'd finish in. Teams they've beaten, I mean, they beat Hull, Borough, Leicester. They've just beaten Everton, of course. They beat Manchester United in it, which was a really good result. And then you look at the sides they've lost to. It's a very mixed bag. Like you say, they've been consistent, but they've got just such a mixed bag of results. Like they've lost to some of the big boys. They've lost to Liverpool. They've lost to Arsenal, Chelsea, and then they've lost to Burnley and lost to sort of West Brom. And you think, what Watford team? What Watford team have we got here? It's confusing. They went out of the EFL Cup to Gillingham, for goodness sake. Like I don't know. I think the difference is with Watford and Everton, they're actually having very similar seasons to an extent. Obviously, Everton on a slide, Watford have kind of lost the teams you expect them to lose to. But the difference is the expectations of Everton going into the season are just so much higher. Whereas for Watford, as we've kind of already talked about, you would have been fairly generous, I think, if you were going to give them a top half finish this year. Yeah.
And yeah, as things stand right now, they kind of look worth it just for the sake of the fact that they're grinding out results, albeit, in a slightly unconvincing manner. Would that be a fair way to describe Watford?
I don't want to take anything away from them because obviously, they're doing well enough to be where they are, but I just don't. They're not a showy team, are they? They're not like
it's like West Brom, isn't it? Who are 1 point behind them.
Yeah, they're very. This season, I would say their stories are very similar. So yeah, but I mean, I'll tell you this now: West Ham wish they were where Watford and West Brom are. West Ham would be crying out for that, as would a team like maybe Palace. So, Should
we talk about West Ham, Liverpool? I feel like after last week's podcast, which was a late one, if you missed it, go watch it because there was lots of Champions League talk and stuff.
There was, round up.
And also, it now dawns on me that the intro to this week's podcast just makes little to no sense without the context of the previous show. But I feel like Liverpool, as a Liverpool fan, this game, I'm thinking West Ham United, relegation zone, we need to bounce back. This is a must-win, really. I don't want to say if we want to have a title challenge, because that's beyond my expectations. But as a top four, the idea this is the kind of game you need to do well.
Yeah, the idea needs to be Liverpool are going for the top four, and if you want to put Liverpool in the title bracket or the top four bracket, this is still the sort of game they need to win. Obviously, a lot was made about Karius against Bournemouth. People were very critical of Karius. I kind of defended him. I thought, apart from one of the goals, which he probably expects to hold on to, he essentially said the same himself. He had a pretty okay game. He didn't do too much wrong.
Did you catch the interview? I didn't know this until
when he slagged off Neville.
I was going to talk about the Steve Cook thing, actually, where Steve Cook said that they were targeting Karius. That was one of Bournemouth's game plans.
Yeah, I wonder what they've seen.
His feathers.
What intrigues me about that is that Karius actually hasn't been all that busy for Liverpool. So I wonder what they'd seen that made them think we're going to target him. I don't know if it was just the idea of let's just try and shoot at him, which I
think part of it's inexperience. He's kind of new to the Premier League.
Yeah,
and I think the issue is we might as well talk about Karius now because I feel like it is a talking point from this game. Certainly, obviously, I think his positioning is very questionable on the Payet free kick. I assume you agree with that. He should be saving that from where it's ended up.
The reason he doesn't get a strong hand on it is because he stood next to the other post. That's
it was very weird. There's kind of that attitude, I think, with goalkeepers where it's like, if I set up my wall correctly and it goes in on the side of my wall, there's not a lot I can do. That doesn't wash with me in this kind of situation because it's not in the bottom corner. And I think for the second one, it's actually Matip's error. The deflection really catches everyone out. I do feel like Karius, I don't think like he can necessarily be blamed for the goal, but at the same time, I feel like he can do better. And I feel like if we were to look across kind of, I don't know, the goalkeepers of the other kind of top 6 teams in the Premier League in Chelsea, Arsenal, City, Spurs and United, you expect the keeper to stop that one there.
Yeah.
And bail the team out.
Well, see, I feel split about this. The first one I think is Karius' fault. I think it's well hit by Payet, but I think any keeper would expect to save it, especially when a keeper ever gets a hand to it. You always think their positioning could be better.
Especially when it's like not really in a corner. I feel like there's times where a keeper gets a fingertip on it and it flies into kind of the inside kind of netting of the goal.
Yeah,
it's a bit unfortunate. Whereas this one, it's low. There's going to be the whole debate of it's bounced in front of him. It's a little bit awkward.
He's a goalkeeper though, so
exactly. Yeah. It doesn't really wash with me.
It's not like James Milner's been put in goal, so I don't agree with that one. With the second one, I think people are going way in depth. Like after the first mistake, which everyone's calling it, people are looking at the second one going, oh, there he is again, look, cocking up. The way he comes out on the ball, like first of all, Matip just doesn't expect it to do what it does, so his feet are all over the shop.
Matip actually disappointed me a bit with this goal. I've been really impressed by him this year, but when the ball kind of caught him out, he didn't look. There was no urgency for him to get back. He kind of just stood on his heels and watched it play out in front of him.
Yeah, it was a bit of a shame. And then with the carrier, with like the fact they finish it, I feel like that is such a 50-50 situation. And I know this is going to sound really sort of basic and obvious, but he either saves it or he doesn't. Like a lot of it depends on where the striker puts it. The striker should score. So to say Karius should save it, I mean, pick one. Like you can only have one or the other. Either he should score or he should save it.
I mean, this is the problem now, isn't it? Is the fact that Karius, he's had a few of these kind of little mistakes, and now we know for the next month, which is a very packed month of fixtures, every little thing he does is going to be scrutinised. There was examples, I feel like Bravo actually for City's got away with this a little bit this year, as he's had a few mistakes. I thought the Willian goal against Chelsea, his positioning was rather poor for that, but no one really bats an eyelid. And the issue is now for Karius, with this Liverpool side that has been playing very well, but now, what was it for Liverpool? I think in their previous 8 games, they'd won 6 of them. They've now lost a game and drawn a game against 2 teams you expect them to beat.
Yeah.
And there's kind of goals that can maybe be attached to the goalkeeper with an extent of blame. And the issue is now that for this next run of results and this next run of fixtures, there is just going to be a massive magnifying glass over everything. Obviously, Liverpool play Middlesbrough midweek. It's a game that you expect Liverpool to win, but if Liverpool concede one, I imagine there'll be people trying to blame Karius. I think the big concern for me, actually, is can Karius deal with it, particularly with a Merseyside derby on the horizon a week on Monday?
I think the thing that gives Karius an advantage is that this has happened to keepers before, and it will continue to happen to goalkeepers. You think about it, like it happened to Szczesny at Arsenal, definitely happened to David De Gea when he first came. Everyone was talking about it. Even Harry Redknapp, I think, after a Spurs game, said, "Oh yeah, we told our boys to shoot from long range." It's like this happens to every keeper, and you are completely right that it entirely depends on how he handles it. He either steps up and works on aspects of his games and asks sort of the coaches around him for help. But the worst thing he can do now is act as if he's not making mistakes and just carry on as he is, because that is sort of the death of keepers in this league. Keepers that adapt and learn the league are the ones that shine. And we've got to remember for Karius, he's played 10 games for Liverpool, if that.
Yeah.
Like everyone who's writing him off at the moment, I'd slow down, because David De Gea was the exact same way. Now people consider him the best keeper in the league.
I think to counteract that point and play a little bit of devil's advocate, for like De Gea's mistakes were not very frequently leading to goals. A lot of his mistakes were just general nerviness, with balls getting whipped in and he would just flap at them, but they didn't actually result in goals. And I feel like as a goalkeeper, if you're conceding goals, that knocks your confidence a lot more than just missing the odd cross or whatever.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair.
I think the tricky thing, as I said, is there's a Merseyside derby on the horizon. We all know it's a Monday night football game. There's going to be so much emphasis on Karius now going into that game. There's going to be this over-the-top analysis.
Well, it's Joe Hart syndrome, isn't it? It's what I said about Joe Hart, is that we won't... Have you heard about Joe Hart recently? Jack, heard any news about Joe Hart recently?
I mean, I've heard that he might be staying at Torino permanently, and that he's not played great, but he's like making the odd save here and there. He's not getting that much praise, but then I feel like that's the sign of a good goalkeeper, if they're not being praised.
That's kind of what I'm saying, is that since that one mistake he had sort of quite early in the season, I've not heard anything about Joe Hart. But you can be sure that next time he miskicks it or like fumbles a shot, it'll be on Twitter, and all the Lad Bible accounts will be loving it, going, "Oh, look at Joe Hart making mistakes again. Maybe Bravo's not the only one." It's like, yeah, you've not mentioned him for 3 months because he's probably doing all right. And Karius needs to sort of understand a similar thing and just think, look, as long as I'm doing all right, then I'll keep my head down, keep working hard, then it'll be fine. But I'd say it's a mentality thing.
One of my concerns perhaps for Liverpool in this situation is, I know he's only had 10 games. It's kind of like, give him time. It's very high risk in a situation like Liverpool are in now, where such a great start to the season, performing definitely above expectations. I think for the start of the season, I think as a Liverpool fan,
would you swap him out? Would you bring Mignolet in?
This is the debate, isn't it? It's, do you give him time when you're on a season where you're third in the league and performing above expectations, and it's fair to say that there perhaps have been points lost due to his mistakes?
Well, it's the question, Jack. Does it damage him more taking him out? That's the big question, isn't it? Like, has it made Simon Mignolet better? Will it make Karius worse? And that's literally the thing Klopp's got to think about.
Bring back Bogdan.
Okay, let's talk about West Ham. Randolph made an incredible save from that Henderson shot, which I think game saving, that save right there.
I mean, that's the thing, isn't it? It's a redemption for him. He had a horrific mistake for Liverpool's second goal where he kind of just dropped it. But at the same time, he made a save, which is as good as a goal. It's the cliche, isn't it? Like, a great save is as like valuable as a great goal, but it really was.
Yeah.
It was very. I mean, Henderson obviously scored that absolute screamer against Chelsea, and I thought it was in the back of the net, if I'm honest. I was already stood up as it flew towards the top corner. It's a great stop by him.
Yes.
And it's such an important point now, this one, for West Ham. Not just because it gets them out the relegation zone, but because with a few games on the horizon now, with Bilic being told he's going to be backed, he's maybe got a little bit of respite. There's Burnley coming up next. They've then got Hull. Granted, then there is a few trickier games for West Ham coming up, if I'm not mistaken. Actually, they've got Swansea before a tricky run.
Yeah.
So with this draw now, I think we said it actually on the last podcast, if Bilic could get 10 points from the next 4 games, there wouldn't be any questions about his job. He's got that 1 point, which I think was key for them to get against Liverpool for the sake of their season.
Yeah.
And now going into these games, these are the kind of games actually where I think West Ham will shine, because West Ham have a very, very talented squad of players. They have their squad, in my opinion, is significantly stronger than a few of the teams kind of in and around them and teams they've got to play. They're a team that was strengthened up for the Europa League. They've fallen out of the Europa League, of course, and I feel like now, if the thing with these next 3 games is, if West Ham win them all, I feel like they probably go on to finish quite comfortably in the top half of the table, and this season it's considered a little bit of a write-off, but at the same time it's not a complete failure.
Yeah.
Whereas if they slip up in these kind of games, big questions asked, January coming up, and I feel like the whole kind of really happy, positive attitude that I think West Ham have had towards Bilic is going to wear thin. I feel like it's one of those things where the board, I know they've kind of said, we're going to back our man, we're going to give him time. I feel like it's one of those things where there's just going to become a breaking point. It won't really build up at all, and then there'll just be a big snap. And that might just be one freak result now. But I think as far as West Ham are concerned, this is as good as what they would have hoped for, I think, going into this game. I feel like not many West Ham fans would have said, yeah, we're going to beat Liverpool today.
Well, they played... I say this I feel like I say this every time Liverpool don't win. But West Ham United played exactly how you should play against Liverpool. You should let us have the ball and don't let us play through you. Like, it's quite simple. Like, I know it sounds ridiculous, but West Ham and Bilic are known for being defensively pretty solid, generally speaking. Like they were last season, they've made sort of more errors this year, but that is how you should play. And if you can execute that, then Liverpool very quickly run out of ideas.
Well, Liverpool's idea was, let's just cross it in the box, which was frustrating me to no end, where he just Origi up on his own.
I did a tweet about it. I think it was 43 crosses in the end. And
I mean, Origi, he's not small, but I wouldn't say he's like your big target when you pump the ball for him. When you look at the players in and around,
he's not always there. That's part of the problem, Jack. He's not always in the middle. A lot of the times, Origi comes short for it and tries to do something from the outside of the box. A lot of times, Origi's one like floating a ball in to Firmino or Mane, and I'm thinking,
that's the thing I was going to say. I look at players like Wijnaldum, I look at players like Coutinho,
even Lallana.
I look at players like Lallana. they're not good in the air. Like trying to do crosses,
they might be good in the air, Jack, but we can't rely on them in the air because they're all under 6 foot. So
I mean, Winston Reid is going to like eat them for breakfast.
Well, that's what I'm saying. As a West Ham defence, if you're essentially, as much as I'm disappointed with Liverpool's offensive output, you've got to give credit to West Ham. They are forcing us to play in that way. So that's what we did, and it played exactly into their hands, and they got the point they probably came for. So, on that respect, I don't want to say it's like Liverpool are just terrible, and that's why we didn't win. West Ham played well. I give them credit. Payet hits a decent free kick. Antonio hustles well, and they get their goals. Not much that can be said about it. We'll quickly say though, the Adam Lallana's goal, nice finish. I will say that. I like that.
Good to have him back, isn't it?
It is. Leads the press.
Been out for a few weeks.
For Liverpool, he's important. I think he does. I think we did. This was the first, like I said last week, we missed Matip against Bournemouth. This week, we certainly miss Coutinho in these sort of crunch games. Should we talk about another match though? Should we move on?
Yeah, United, Tottenham. That one seems tempting to me. It was 1-0. It was one of a few 1-0s today on Sunday.
What's unbelievable to me, Jack, is the best player in the Bundesliga last year, or one of the sort of top 3 players in the Bundesliga last year, isn't that bad. He's quite good,
He's actually playing football now.
It's shocking. It is shocking. The big problem with this Mkhitaryan nonsense is that Mourinho didn't sign him, is the talk. So he was like, well, I'll play him at the start, and it won't go very well, and then that'll be my excuse to not play him again. And that's kind of been what's happened for Mkhitaryan, who's had such a long time out. He's come back in, and at least he's making the most of his opportunities. I guess that's. I feel
like for United, they've got a really weird problem when it comes to players that wide. You look at players like Martial, Depay, Rashford, Mkhitaryan. They're all kind of sharing the appearances between them, but no one's really shone and been kind of that staple of the first team out wide. Yeah. And, Mkhitaryan, I feel like he's now got a very strong case for it. I thought Herrera was superb. Obviously, I think he got man of the match. He was just incredible in the centre.
I quite like the way Herrera plays football, but he doesn't have a whinge, does he? Never his fault, ever. When he makes a foul or he gets shoved or whatever, he constantly having a little moan. Oh,
exactly. I can feel that. I feel Mkhitaryan, he got injured at the end. We don't know the extent of that. Mourinho seemed to think of this post-match kind of conference that it wasn't as bad as it looked. It was a bit of an innocuous one. I don't know if you saw it, where Danny Rose has just kind of done a little cynical foul from behind. He's just trying to, trip him up, but he's kind of just landed on Mkhitaryan's ankle underneath him, and it's just an unfortunate one. I feel like there's some tackles where a player's foot's planted in the ground and the other player comes in recklessly. I don't feel like as a defender you can really account for landing on someone else's foot in that kind of manner. Yeah,
I think frustratingly though, it'll probably be the sort of injury that'll give him sort of a week or two out. Just there might be a little bit of swelling. It might just be the case of, look, we've got to rest him. Obviously, they've got a game coming up this week. He probably won't play in that one, for example. And for Mourinho, who, as you say, is trying to find this consistency, that is the most frustrating thing that could have happened. Aside from that, you kind of made the point. I thought Zlatan looked quite good, actually. I think Zlatan's been a little bit harshly treated because he's not scored maybe as many as people expected. I think he, Mkhitaryan, and Martial caused quite a few problems for Spurs. The first time of the season, I thought Spurs looked... Actually, no, not the first time. Thought second half against Chelsea, it was a bit like this as well. But Spurs aren't that good at going forward. I know they've not scored, and that's a really obvious thing to say. But especially in the first half, it was played up to Kane. Kane's running channels a lot of the time, which is fine. But Old Trafford's a pretty big pitch. You got to get there. And it felt a little bit like watching Spurs in the Champions League because of, I don't know, it had that feel to it.
Well, is Janssen injured at the moment? Because he wasn't on the bench for this game.
You would assume so then. Yeah.
Son and Kane are kind of the only two other strikers in that side, and they both started. Obviously, Son went off for Sissoko, but you kind of look across the Spurs bench, considering they were a goal down, their options were Nkudu, Vorm, Eric Dyer, Sissoko, Wimmer, Winks, and Davis. Like there isn't many game-changing options there. You kind of look on the flip side at United. They've got players like Mata, Rooney, Rashford, and Fellaini. I use Fellaini very loosely there, but the point is they are players who come on change a game for the better, or for the worse in Fellaini's case, I guess.
Oh, you're just like the United fans that booed him. You make me sick.
I mean, the issue is for Spurs is it just kind of looked like they were out of ideas. There were players like Dele Alli who looked very, very frustrated. And I thought he was quite poor, actually.
Yeah, well, much like the last game we spoke about, that you can terrorise Tottenham for not doing enough, but actually, when you look at it as it is, it's very Mourinho. The way in which they're set up, the way in which they're there to sort of stifle anything that comes forward. The way the defence plays, the line in which they hold, it's very well drilled already for Mourinho. And that was kind of a question mark a while ago, that are United capable of playing under Mourinho in a Mourinho system and still scoring goals? Well, if he plays Mkhitaryan and gets more out of Martial, then they're going to have no problems because Pogba gets a little bit more freedom in that case because the weight is taken off him and placed elsewhere. And if like Mourinho's for the last however long has been the master of seeing how teams play and stopping their flow and stopping their rhythm, and that's essentially what he did. Tottenham had a lot of the ball, but in terms of clear-cut chances, there wasn't really anything.
There was the Wanyama header maybe that.
Potentially could have done a little bit more with that, but overall, I thought,
I feel like it's quite an interesting game, this one, because I feel like if United win 1-0 and Van Gaal's in charge, people go, it's a bit boring, it's a bit bland. I know we've won our first game since September.
United need the win, didn't they? That was the difference this time around.
I think the thing with Mourinho is, like, when he does it, it's like hailed as a genius, and it may well be, but I feel like it's quite interesting to see how the perception changes based off a manager, because I don't think actually United have been that much better than they have been over the last few seasons this year thus far. Obviously, still a lot of time to turn that around.
I think on that, though, it was like, this is the first time this season, arguably, it's been a must-win for United. United couldn't afford to lose this because it would have put Spurs 6 points ahead, and them and City are level in sort of a
9 points ahead.
9 points ahead, sorry? Oh, yeah, of course, sorry, because United would have stayed on 21, apologies. So, 9 points ahead, which would have been one hell of a gap for United to make up. Like, you could have conceivably said that there is absolutely, like, people might say this is the case already, but there is no way Manchester United would even be in sort of title contention. That's gone. And that was an expectation before the season started. People were actually calling for that. So, I don't know. It's a big win. Spurs will be disappointed, but it was a must-win for United, and they won it. So,
I mean, the tricky thing for Spurs here is that they've played Arsenal, Chelsea, and United fairly recently. They've got 1 point from those 3 games.
Yeah.
And the issue they've got is they're looking to finish top 4. And they're not in a bad position, to be fair to Spurs. They're in 5th. They've only lost 2 games.
After this Christmas period, they could conceivably be second, and it wouldn't be that shocking.
That's the thing. The fixtures they've got coming up, they've got Hull, Burnley, Southampton, Watford. Got Chelsea to start the new year. And then you come beyond that, they've got West Brom City, Sunderland. There's 2 tricky games in there, but realistically, in their next 8 Premier League games...
Whoa. You forgot the confidence knocker that is Aston Villa away in the FA Cup.
Apologies. It's actually... But in the next
Villa
8
are
games,
away at Spurs, my bad.
They are indeed for the FA Cup.
Sorry, Callum.
So I think that's on TV as well, excitingly, on a
Is
Sunday.
It? Wow. That one to avoid.
But no, those 8 games, really, Spurs are going to want 6 wins minimum, I imagine, to be where they want to be. But also, they're going to be looking at this second half of the season, they're going to be going into at the likes of Chelsea and City and thinking, we need to start winning these kind of games. And I know this is a tricky one away from home against Manchester United, but conceivably, out of all the games against kind of the quote-unquote big sides in the Premier League, a United team who haven't won in their previous 4 home league games, this is a prime opportunity, to upset the apple cart a little bit, pull yourself away in that 5th place, and really kind of stamp your authority as a team really in amongst kind of, the top dogs for a top 4 finish this year.
Yeah, absolutely. Right then, shall we move on to our final? Should we do one more game? I think we should chat about one more game.
Do one more game, but there's only really one incident I want to talk about in this game, and it's actually the Hull Palace game, which I feel like if you're a Palace fan, you're just enjoying all the goals at the moment. I feel like it's a bit of a roller coaster, isn't it? You're along for the ride.
Palace fans, you're having fun, right? I know you're in 15th, but you're having fun. I don't know if they are having fun. You want to talk about the Robert Snodgrass dive?
I do.
For those that missed it, it was Hull 3, Palace 3. Back and forth sort of game as well. I'm just going to read out the stat you wrote in the notes, Jack. 36 goals scored in Palace's last 7 league games. That's just... what's that on average? 4, 5?
They just don't really care, do
7,
they?
6? I don't know. It's one of those. But yeah, the first goal was the most contentious. Robert Snodgrass goes down. I think it's Scott Dan, is it not? Who goes
he was livid. Actually, I think I quite rate Scott. I quite rate Scott Dan, and he's usually, if he gives away a foul, he's usually the first one of those kind of players who just accepts it. There's some offenders who just deny it all the time. Mostly South Americans. Is that stereotyping?
Have you got Scott Dan in your fantasy team? No.
I haven't. No, but I feel like he's one of those players who people just put in their fantasy football team for a bit of a punt.
I should say on that actually, I had a decent week this week.
Did you?
I clawed back 20 points on you. Yeah.
Oh, dear.
Yeah, so it's getting very tight at the top. Actually, I'll say this out loud for those that are interested. Jack currently, between me, Callum, and Jack leads fantasy football on 707 points. Well done. Keno, 2 points behind. He gained on you this week, 705. And then I had some very poor weeks in a row. 686. So I'm only sort of 20 or so points now behind you. So.
I was doing very, very well. I was top of my work league. I was having fun. And then I played my wild card, and it actually completely blew up in my face. I had to make 5 transfers this week.
Yeah, I had a grower in this week, so Ding.
And that went well for you.
Yeah.
Charlie Austin's out for 3 to 4 months. That's thrown an issue in my fantasy football team, so he's going to have to be removed.
I feel for you. So yeah.
But anyway, the Snodgrass incident.
Apology. Game any fantasy team? Yes, Snodgrass. Actually, Snodgrass probably is quite a good fantasy pick.
He's been involved in 50% of the Palace goals this year.
The Palace goals. Wow.
Sorry, that would be an impressive. the Hull goals. But on this incident, just go back to it. Scott Dann is usually the kind of defender which, if he commits a foul, he holds up his hands and goes, "Yeah, did that." You know, he doesn't really argue with it.
Because it is a foul. Yeah.
On this one, he's livid. I've never seen a player so exasperated by the entire situation. Like he cannot believe what's been given, and he knows it's a complete dive. And the thing that annoys me a little bit about it is, it's one of those ones where I think Snodgrass is anticipating the contact. I hate that kind of get-out clause of, I thought he was going to hit me, so I fell over.
Yeah.
And Snodgrass has kind of come out on Twitter and been like, I was just planning on riding the tackle. But the issue is, Scott Dann's not made contact, and you've just fallen, and then you've kind of dived, the rest getting the penalty, and you've scored the penalty yourself, and then afterwards you've gone, it wasn't a penalty, I feel bad about it. It's like,
Jack.
Doesn't really wash, does it?
This calls for only one thing, okay? It's about time that lie detectors were pitch side. I've been calling it for some time, about the last sort of 20 seconds or so, and it's about time that Jeremy Kyle styled lie detectors are put pitch side. Who would host this? Who would host Premier League Liars? I'm calling it Premier League Liars.
I feel like Rio Ferdinand would be quite forceful.
I should say, if Kino was here, I wouldn't have dared to talk about this, but I know with you'll get on board. So Rio Ferdinand, did you say? The man that didn't turn up for his drug test?
Yes, I did.
I'm not sure he's the best host for this.
So I'm just thinking of all the controversies in Premier League history that this would solve. You know, all the alleged racist events. Like, we could just hook them up with, like, what did you say?
Well, just anyone, really. Just anyone that does a bit of a misdemeanour. Anyone that's red carded. You could just, maybe as people go off, you could say, did you deserve that red card? And if they say no, and they're proven to be a liar, they get an extra game ban. But honesty is rewarded. This is the point I'm making.
So you get their ban removed.
Yeah, so I think if Robert Snodgrass has gone over slightly easily and not been touched, and, you know, it seems unfair, maybe don't give him the penalty, Jack. Just give him a free kick from outside of the box for his honesty.
Is it one of these things like Hawkeye where the manager has to appeal for it? Like, he does like a little signal he does from the sideline for the lie detector.
Have you ever played the game, Jack? Well, this is how I would do it. Have you ever played the game which is affectionately known in drinking circles as bullshit? Bullshit.
I have indeed.
Yeah, where you have cards and then you say, 3 threes, and if you know they're talking, you're telling a lie. This is a card game, folks, if you've never played it before. Anyway, I would have it done in a similar way. So if a decision is given, then, I mean, Premier League managers would love this, especially people like Sean Dyche. He would just have to shout, bullshit! And if he thought it was a misdemeanour, the lie detector would come on, Premier League Liars would begin, the host would come out. We can't have Ferdinand. Who's hosting this? This is important.
Antoine.
I think... No, he can't have his brother. I think maybe Allardyce, because he's free at the moment.
He is. Would you have other people who are free at the moment?
Would you have a different role maybe a different person every week?
Guest host it.
I know. I don't know if he's playing at the moment. I'm sure he is, but not very often. Stephen Ireland, who told one of the best lies in football history. Yeah.
Please indulge me. I don't feel like I know this lie.
What? That Stephen Ireland told. I mean, the fact you don't know this is confusing to me. So, Stephen Ireland, I'll read it out as the story came out. I've looked it up now as well. Ireland was at the centre of controversy when in the immediate aftermath after the Republic of Ireland international match, days before their crunch game against the Czech Republic, Steve Staunton informed him of a telephone call he'd just received from his girlfriend reporting the death of his maternal grandmother. Staunton quickly consented to Ireland's compassionate leave on these grounds. A private jet was chartered for his return. However, Jack... there's a however here. The media quickly discovered that Ireland's grandmother was not dead.
It's a bit awkward, that, isn't it?
At which point, Ireland announced it was his paternal grandmother who had died. But yet again, Jack, reporters discovered that Ireland's paternal grandmother was also still alive, and her relatives had threatened to sue one newspaper that reported her death. Ireland changed his story again, saying one of the grandmothers had divorced, and it was the second wife who had died. That was also quickly discovered to be untrue.
You know, when you're at school, I'm sure everyone's had this. You have an incident at school where you lie about something. It's usually at primary school. You lie about something, you found it, and then you just have an experience in your life which goes like, I'm never going to lie again. Or like, if you're going to lie, you're a bit clever about it. What he's done here is he's not had that lesson, so he's thought he can just bullshit his way out of it.
Okay,
repeatedly lying.
Now, tragically, so that in itself, the way that he's lied 3 times, Jack, is quite funny. It was reported that sadly his girlfriend had I mean, the worst thing is that it's now that he's claimed, no one knows what to believe, but this is awful if it did happen, that his girlfriend actually had a miscarriage, and he was trying to cover that up by saying that his grandmother's had died. And then he eventually came out and was like, I lied about it, I'm sorry everyone.
The story's no longer funny anymore.
Well, no. Like, obviously, the end of that is terrible. And I wanted to at least sort of give everyone some closure. But the idea that he lied 3 times and just had to quickly change it every time is quite funny. Like, that side of it is very funny.
Well,
of course, the end, not so funny. But, you know.
The thing is, with this kind of whole situation with the Snodgrass dive, going back to what we were talking about originally.
So Stephen Ireland has come on, Jack, and he's gone, right, they've said you've dived, but Snodgrass has gone, I'm not interested in this programme, and he's taken the penalty kick.
Well, the issue I have with this, go back to reality now, I'm afraid. In Scotland, in the Scottish Football League, a player can be given a retrospective ban for diving. If it's and in England, we don't have that. So Snodgrass, he's not going to receive a punishment.
Should he receive one?
I think so. I think in that kind of situation, I actually think there should be a kind of situation like this where a player can come out and go, actually, didn't make contact to the referee in play, and it's not given. And as a result, the player doesn't get suspended. I still feel like a player would take the suspension to gain a penalty.
Yeah, but I think so as well. If it mattered that much, you wouldn't care, would you? Does the goal matter more than the suspension? Probably.
But it's just a bit. I feel like in this kind of situation, if we're going to have players get banned for just lots of little things and for getting sent off, arguably this is worse because this is actually cheating and getting away with it. This is lying,
Jack. This is, you know.
Well, if you get sent off, it's kind of like, or you get sent off in kind of retrospect, it's not actually that different, is it? Really? You know, if you get a ban for like punching someone, but the ref hasn't seen it, as opposed to diving, the difference is that it's just not violent conduct. But in a way, a dive like this actually swings the game more than a piece of violent conduct, which is just a scuffle that then never amounts to anything.
Yeah, that's fair. Have you seen the rules, by the way, in China about I
do love the Chinese Super League, so please tell me more.
Well, for those that don't know, I'm going to plug my own thing here, Jack. You're doing an Advent series. Do you want to talk about that quickly while I get the rules for China's league?
I'm doing a Football Manager Advent calendar series with Santa Claus FC at Work the Space. I was about to say workthespace.com. I can't say that because someone stole that domain name from me. It's just youtube.com/workthespace.
Oh, I just realised I don't have the available things in front of me, which is awful for a podcast. Essentially, though, in China, they have different rules depending on the level of the severity of the offence. So for a minor violent conduct, it's just a game, just one game, just a slap, one game.
Is that like a Fabregas tap on Fernandinho?
Well, the thing is, right, it just gets progressively worse. So sort of more severe, 3-game ban. For I don't know what they're sort of classifying. And then, Jack, if you punch an official, it's 12 games.
Actually, I did know this. I can't remember why.
I love the fact to just go. They've got that written down. Like someone said, if you punch an official, that will be 12 games, and they've already decided on 12 games.
My favourite rule actually in China is the fact that you have to have a Chinese goalkeeper. It's like, they've got all these new superstars, players like Freddie Guarin, Jackson Martinez all going in, and they're kind of like, right, we've got all these fun players in, like, we need to keep, a Chinese core, right? Everyone has to have a Chinese goalkeeper. It's like they know how to do entertainment. I mean, arguably, in England, there should be a rule where teams have to sign like a Vanarama Conference goalkeeper who has to play every game in goal for them.
What must be really upsetting for some professional footballers that really can't be bothered? You think about some of the journeymen. I mean, this is Mike Bunn conversation coming back up. That they can't go to China and make millions.
Well, the word on the street is that John Terry's weighing up an option from China at the moment.
Of course it is. Oh, Jack, every Premier League footballer is weighing up the option of going to China and just becoming a multi-millionaire for a couple of years.
Do you want to be my agent and we'll try and lie our way into the Chinese FA as a player? I
think if we went at it with full force, we could potentially get you signed up to maybe... I don't know. Some of these teams are pretty good, so I don't want to... I don't know. I reckon there's a team in there that we could work our way into.
I mean, I was shortlisted for the FBA Football Freestyler Awards. So.
Yes. Your mum can be an accomplice to this. This works out brilliantly for us.
She speaks Chinese.
Does she really?
No, I wish she did.
That would have been great. Bloody hell! It
would have all come together then.
I was going to ask you for some contact details. Anyway, Robert Snodgrass.
We got off the rails this last game.
I like to think that Keno will think, oh yeah, I better catch up with the podcast that wasn't on. Just have a listen through and see if I can.
He'll watch the first half an hour and think it was a perfectly normal show.
Yeah,
when we started recording, just to pull back the curtain, when we started this, we were like 45-minute show, bit of a short one.
Yeah, I think if people get this far, can you just leave the comment, just so Keno has to listen to this sort of inane waffle? Can you just leave the comment saying, yeah, kick Keno off the show? Because then on the YouTube video, me and Jack can then show him all the comments saying kick Keno off the show, and he'll be baffled. And then we'll talk about that next
Keno
episode.
Out.
Pardon?
Keno out. Maybe get
hashtag Keno out, or just kick Keno out.
If you're listening on on iTunes, feel free to just tweet us at ForTheFans Show.
Yeah, just with hashtag Keno out. That'd be perfect. I just want, because Keno gets notifications to his phone, doesn't he?
He does.
From the ForTheFans account. So I think the more sort of reasoning to remove Keno, I should make it clear, we don't want to remove Keno, but I would like to put Keno into it.
Speak for yourself.
I would like to... That was very quick. I would like to put Keno in a state of nervous disposition. Because obviously Villa aren't in a relegation battle this year, so he needs to have his yearly disposition.
I mean, he thinks they're going to be third in the league, so his disposition's going to be the playoff final loss.
Indeed. So yeah, if you could do that, folks, that'd be great. Hashtag Keno out, or just remove Keno from the show after what he said last week. Maybe that would really confuse him. Okay, Snodgrass. I mean,
we've done Snodgrass now at this point. I will say Wilfried Zaha. Lovely goal. Doesn't really know what he's doing halfway through, but then smashes it and it looks great. So I give him all the credit in the world. So the Premier League table chart looks a little bit like this. Chelsea are top of the league at this stage, 37 points after their win. Arsenal in second after their win, 34 points. Liverpool then 31. Manchester City 30. Tottenham 27. And Manchester United 24. You've then got a lot of teams that are pretty close, from 7th to, I dare say, 16th. There's only 6 points in it, so a couple of wins here and there, and it could all change around. And of course, Sunderland still bottom of the table. They're back to losing ways. Hull, can I just say, none of the teams now have the 8 points, I think it was, you predicted at the start of the season. I know that for a while, Sunderland were your faint hope.
Yes, they were. Hull on 12, though. I still don't... Okay, 20. I think a team won't break 20 this year. I'm daring. What can I tell you? I think Hull might still be that team. I think that actually wraps us up, Jack. I think that brings us to the end.
I feel like we're done.
Well, we'll do another show. Well, the glory of this is, folks, obviously no feature again today because of lack of Keno. But we will be doing another show after this midweek fixture section. Are there any good ones to look out for? I'm sure there are. Tell me, Jack.
Bournemouth.
Who is it?
You've got Bournemouth, Watford. Bournemouth, Leicester.
Is that the only one?
Everton, Arsenal.
Everton, Arsenal. Oh, good. That's an interesting one. Two teams.
Palace v United. I actually fancy Palace to win that one 4-2.
Are you joking?
No. I actually think Palace might just score a load against Mourinho.
Making light of the situation. Okay. There aren't.
To be fair, it's a lot of
games. Well, it's a lot of games that actually this is kind of slip up alley right now, because all the sort of the teams at the top play a lot of the teams at the bottom. And it'll be who wins their games and who slips up and who from the sort of these lower reaches can put in a really top performance. The only sort of dead rubber game, well, I say dead rubber, we're 15 games in, is Stoke-Southampton, who are both sort of mid-table and can't really be affected by what the result is. So, boys, what was that?
It's the battle of the team in 10th and 11th. Yeah, it's battle for top half.
Indeed. Well, sorry, yeah. Well, now you put it like that, then I didn't realise there was so much at stake. That then does bring us to the end. Jack, thank you for joining me. I'm glad you've turned up.
Well, at least someone had to. Hopefully, Callum will be back for the midweek show, although he is in London. We don't know where.
We don't know.
He's somewhere. I think he might join us from McDonald's on Wi-Fi.
Oh, that'd be nice. We could start ordering things on his behalf. That does bring us to the end. I've been Dr. Ben GFM, otherwise known as Ben. I've been joined by Jack, and Keno's been absent. Just to make that clear again, Keno was absent. Do tweet him as well at ForTheFans Show on Twitter, youtube.com/ForTheFans Show, iTunes, search ForTheFans Show, and you'll find us on there. You can subscribe and get all the shows to your iTunes. Also, if you're on Android, Podcast Addict is very good. I recommend it if you're not already using it. If you want to listen to the podcast on there as well. And we'll see you again later this week. It'll probably be Thursday, won't it?
It will be, of course. Just one last thing. Classic football shirts. Get your football shirts.
Yes.
If you're watching on YouTube, links at the top of the description. They have some lovely retro wear.
I think next show we might give away a voucher or something.
We'll look into that for Christmas.
I think we should. We're going to do. I think in the build up to Christmas, we're going to give away a few vouchers.
Keep an eye out for them. But check out the link. It's on our Twitter for you guys listening on iTunes at ForTheFans Show. And I think we're done. Keno's gone. We've kind of just gone off the rails.
We've said that now so many times. This has become very much circa 2014 podcast at this stage. I'm a fan.
Should we just start the show again? Should we just start going in a loop now?
Oh no, there was a few shows we've done before where we've recorded a whole one and then lost the audio. We're not willing to go through that ball ache again. That does bring us to the end then. Thank you for listening. And from me and Jack, we love with care. Until next time, we'll see you again very soon. Goodbye. So that David Luiz thing, are we agreed that you were wrong?
No, I think the linesman can't make that call. I think the referees had a mare.
I got the backing of the listeners, so...
I mean, you pandered to them. How much did you pay them?
There's some classic football shares vouchers that have gone missing.
Brilliant.